Hi, everybody. Welcome to Show It Live here on Show It Field, and this is Liz.
We are so excited to be back for a whole nother year of Show It Live episodes, and this is a weekly webcast. We produce this here at Show It. Our team puts this together. Each week we bring on a different guest, and we talk about a different topic related to photography, small business ownership, and being a creative.
Yeah, so the last time you haven't seen us for a year.
It's been a whole year.
Last year. This is
last year. This is so 2016. It's happening.
Oh, 2016.
2016.
I have trouble with dates, but it's important when they write them down.
Yes.
So they've written this one down for me.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
2016.
2016. No, we have some exciting things coming up.
We have so many exciting. 2016 is going to be a really good year around Show It.
It is. It is. There's this event coming up in the beginning quarter of 2016 called WPPI. Mm-hmm. And we are doing our third annual Show It to Your Dinner.
Yep, the third one we've done. It's going to be so cool. It's going to be at the Wicked Spoon, which is an amazing buffet inside of the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas. It's Sunday, March the 6th, I believe, is the date. And we still have a handful of tickets left.
That is definitely the date because the expo starts on the 7th.
There you go.
So it's the night before the expo.
That's very exciting. So we hope that you'll come and join us at WPPI, actually come to the trade show and be on the show floor with us. But we'd love to have dinner with you on Sunday, March 6th. You can grab a ticket if you go to showithere.com, which is where you are right now to watch the show live. You can find all of the information about grabbing a ticket and coming to the dinner.
Yeah, and at WPPI, there's going to be some other exciting things going on.
Some really big things.
We're going to have a booth. Which is fun. Yeah, I actually saw the guys designing it early this morning. It doesn't look like a spaceship.
Very cool.
But it looks like it could be.
We will pretend it is our own spaceship.
Yeah, it could
because we're designing it in the mothership.
Yeah.
After all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. Nate was working on it this morning in kind of a cool CAD design program. And it was really fun to see him spin it around.
They'd use my body double. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. I thought they were going to use some guy named Gary.
No, we should share that on the internet. It looked just like really muscular, super thin.
Right. Was he growing like the 2016 facial hair?
Nothing like me.
Nothing, not at all. Okay.
No. But at WPPI, we're going to be talking about something, and we're going to be talking about it early.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about it next week as well. So next week's episode of Show It Live, once again, we do this weekly. Next week's is a super exciting one as well. We're talking about Show It 5.
We are.
Yeah.
We're going to do an entire episode talking about Show It 5. And we're actually going to do it on Thursday. Normally our shows are Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. But we're now. Like right now.
Yeah.
But we're going to do this show next Thursday. We're going to talk all about Show It 5. We're going to give away some details that we know you guys are clamoring to get. But we're also going to talk to a photographer who has a Show It 5 site.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's very cool. Her name is Sarah Zimmer, and Sarah actually shot the very first wedding of 2016. She shot a wedding on New Year's Eve in Times Square. Yeah, and it was all part of a huge wedding giveaway that Generation Tux had done. And so we're really excited to share her site with you, sarahzimmerphotography.com. We'll talk about how we designed it in Show It 5, all the different elements.
Was Ryan Seacrest there? That's really all I want to know from this point forward.
You know, I don't really know if Ryan Seacrest was there, but I know that Sarah was there and she got to photograph the very first wedding, which is very
Ryan Seacrest. That's cool.
It's very cool. So we're excited for that. We hope that you will join us next week.
Yeah, and getting back to this week, because next week's going to be exciting. This week is really exciting.
It is.
Something we like to do here at Show It is we like to feature some of our awesome Show It-ers. This week we actually have a husband-wife team, Scott and Mystery Williams, out of, I believe they're just north of Seattle.
Mount Vernon, Washington. Which is a beautiful part of the country.
Yeah, so mysteryandscott.com. This is them. They're a lovely couple. I really love their website. They have their different likes and everything that you can go through, and it shows based off how many hearts. Like they really like what they're doing, their favorite books or things to read.
They met in college. They're college sweethearts, which I really loved. Love their photography. It's absolutely gorgeous. And their website was designed by Two Blokes Design, which is a design partner here at Show It.
Yeah, Cinnamon, or Jason Taves, as he's known.
If you don't know him by the name Cinnamon.
His real name is Cinnamon. And then he just
goes by Jason Taves. Yeah. So Jason is half of Two Blokes Design, and it's very, very cool company. You can go and check them out at twoblokes.com.
Yep. Yeah, the number 2.
The number 2. Yes. Use the number 2. So that's what's happening this week. Mystery and Scott, congratulations on being our Show It-ers of the week. We hope that you'll join us next week for our show. But we have a really great show today, and it's actually on a topic I'm currently struggling with myself.
Yeah. And so if you are also struggling with this topic, on the left side, or my left, your right side of Liz, there's a great chat window that you can ask questions in. We're going to have a giveaway today. And so to enter the giveaway, all you have to do, ask a question here in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it live on the show.
Yeah. Today we're talking about creating and selling albums, and our guest is Melissa Jill. So ask a question of Melissa in the chat. We want to know what you want to know about creating and selling albums, and it can really be any question in that area, which is a really big one. And like I said, I'm currently kind of struggling with it. I've got a couple of album designs that I need to get done, and I'm just having a hard time doing it.
Yeah.
So.
And Melissa is the owner of Align Design, but what I think is even cooler than that, she's local here to Phoenix. I used to live right down the street from her, which was really cool. But she is a super great film photographer here, based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and she's amazing. She's been shooting weddings for umpteen years. I can't remember.
I think it's a decade plus, and we'll have to ask her.
She's been shooting weddings for 12 years. That's awesome. And she's an amazing film photographer, guys.
And such a great educator. Her workshop was one of the ones that I took. I kind of went through like a workshop crazy phase. We all do. As you do, right? As a photographer. And it was really a turning point for me in my photography business, which is great. So well, let's welcome without further ado,
Melissa Jill to the show.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so fun when we have guests in studio.
It's the best.
Yay! Yeah. I'm so excited to be here physically with you on this comfy chair.
It's awesome.
Pretty comfy.
They tease me about the chairs. I love the chairs, you guys. I just can't get enough of them. I think we have like 17 of them.
You've tried to get enough of them.
I have tried to get enough of them. I can't help myself. So many chairs. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being here to talk about this topic, albums, creating them and selling them, because it can be a huge part for someone's business to add in albums. A lot of photographers start by not offering albums, I think, in their businesses, because it seems like a big daunting task to figure out.
Yeah, when I first got into it, I thought it would be, I had one of my first clients ask me for an album, and I was like, oh, sure, I'll just whip something together and this will be easy. Not so much, you know. I got into it and realized, wow, this is a beast. This is like a lot of decisions, a lot of options. How do I do this well? And it's been quite a journey to try and figure that out. So I'm very, I just commiserate with other photographers, definitely, who, are more at the beginning of their journey trying to figure this whole album thing out.
How important can it be for a photographer, for their business, to actually jump that hurdle and start offering albums?
So I think like success for your own business, but for me, there's the money aspect. We all need to make money, and then there's having happy clients, right? So we want to make sure our clients are happy. And as far as the money goes, like, one of the things I realized early on that's so true is that, it's a lot easier to make more money off of current clients than it is to find more new clients. And that's the thing. I get so many photographers asking me, how do I market myself? How do I attract new clients? But they're not asking an even better question, which is, how do I maximize the value of the clients that I do have, who already love me, who are already giving me money, and albums is the number one way you can do that. And I've definitely seen the effects of that in my own business, just because I know that, the profit discussion is such an important integral part of this. I wanted to kind of share my profit from 1 year in business with albums. And this particular year, I shot 13 weddings. I don't shoot a lot of weddings. I shoot mostly high-end weddings, just 10 or so a year. This year, I shot 13. And of those 13 weddings, 9 of my clients purchased an album. The important thing to note is, of the 4 people who didn't purchase an album, 3 of them were photographers themselves. So they wanted to get they were already stretching to hire me, and they wanted to get the high-res images and kind of do it themselves. So there was really only one client that was like a typical bride who didn't include an album in their package. And, we were able to profit, clients spent over $30,000 on albums that year. And we saw, about $24,000, $25,000 in profit. So as far as like the success of your business and, you know, ramping things up and getting, you know, that profit, it can be super, super key. And then the other, you know, kind of metric of, you know, success and why it would be important is because you want your clients to be happy. And, you know, clients nowadays, a lot of times will come to you just wanting the digital images. They think of that as being important, but really everybody wants a wedding album. I mean, who doesn't grow up looking at their parents' wedding album, their grandparents' album? I mean, it's just, that's what you get when you get married. It's, you know, the way that you tell the story of your wedding. You know, people aren't going to pull up their wedding images on a computer and show those to their grandkids. They're going to give them an album to look through, you know? And so I really believe in my heart that, you know, clients are going to be happiest if they walk away from an experience with me having like a custom heirloom, you know, album that they can't go on and create themselves. This is something that's unique, that's one of a kind, that's going to stand the test of time, that they can pass on to the generations to come.
You know, and I think that's one of my favorite things you mentioned is the cost of like bringing on new clients. Like generally throughout the history of time, it's always cost more to gain new clients than it does to retain your current ones, or to, you know, provide more value or have them spend. And if they already are spending money with you, it's because they love you. Like, and that's the one way that people can continue to say they love you, is by spending more money on your services. So I think that's probably like the biggest aha moment right there.
Absolutely.
Well, and the technology changes over time, right? You might have photos on your phone now, but I was talking with Todd and Nate this morning and saying I cleaned out a closet recently and I found a ton of floppy disks from like high school and college. A floppy disk, right? And there's no way for me to know, except for what I wrote on that, what is actually on that disc. I can't access it. I can't use it, but I can go and get my wedding album off of the shelf. And pass it along, and there's no plugins, there's no batteries, there's nothing else that's needed.
The other thing for that is like social media. Like our lives are on social media right now, you know. We document our lives on Facebook and on Instagram, but who's to say if those are going to even be around 10 years from now? I mean, we don't own Facebook or Instagram, and all of those photos that are on there, they're not going to be on there if they shut it down. Disappear. I mean, they could, you know. So you can't rely on that as being like the way that you share your wedding.
I think there's a pretty slim chance that Facebook or Instagram, I mean, they're the same. I don't think they're going anywhere, but you know, I agree that technology changes all the time. I love tangible things. I'm a very nostalgic guy, so I love looking through prints and albums and all of that. And I think that even though we've gone into a digital age, I definitely don't feel like we've lost that as a society. My kids still love it. Like they think a print is the coolest thing in the world. When we get prints back and they're of them, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, it's a picture of me. Yeah, they'd rather post a picture of them with their print than just post a picture.
No, I love the tangible aspect. I also like that you showed us on that slide, Melissa, what the revenue was that was generated and what the profit was, because it's really important. And I think this is something I had struggled with until you helped me with it. Pricing your albums appropriately so you actually are making money on your album and not just collecting enough to cover the cost of ordering and giving that album away, because it's maybe the one physical product in a photography business that you're selling, and you price that a little bit differently than you would price services. So I think that was great that you showed like there needs to be room. You do need to make a profit.
Yeah, absolutely. Off of albums. Albums are expensive to create too. I mean, you've got your costs from the album company, your time costs to design it or pay to outsource it. So you definitely need to price those accordingly, you know. And I think when you're starting out, it's hard to put a higher price point on something like that. You're scared that people won't want it. But, you know, premium custom design heirloom, you know, things that you can't just go make yourself are expensive. All, you know, no matter what industry you're in. And you know, I think probably one of the lower priced kind of ends of what you want to be charging for an album is around $1,500, you know, is it maybe a good base, and then up from there. So my kind of rule of thumb is like 3 to 5 times your cost. So you kind of figure out, you know, the cost that you're going to have to pay for this album, and then multiply that times 3 or 5, and then pick something kind of in between there.
So taking off your photographer hat and the reasons you love that, you know, you started a line album design. What are some of the biggest complaints you get from photographers? like other photographers, obviously you've taught and you've done a lot of things, but when it comes to actually designing an album, what are some of the biggest, like,
so
I would do it, but
what's holding them back?
Yeah.
Well, I want to answer that question in two ways. There's a couple different questions. One is just their biggest complaint about albums in general.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that I hear from photographers is, I can't get my clients to value an album. How do I get them to include one in their package? You know, I don't think my clients really care about albums, I hear. And I'm like, I want to tell those people, you know, what's more likely is that you aren't communicating your passion for albums. And so your clients don't even realize how cool they are or what they could possibly have. And so my number one tip for you, if that's your struggle, is to share your passion about albums with your clients. You know, figure out why you want your clients to walk away with an album, whether it's, you know, your love for your parents' album or your own wedding album. Maybe you didn't get a wedding album for yourself and you regret it, or maybe you did and it's your favorite thing that you have, or, you know, maybe you have a story from a past client about what they told you about how much that album means to them. And so just share that with your clients. And there's a number of ways that you can really communicate your passion for albums to your clients. One of them is really in the structure of your pricing. You know, I include an album in every one of my packages. And in doing that, I want to communicate to my clients, this is the number one product that you're going to want to have. It's just an assumption that you're going to want a wedding album. It's included. Now, my packages are based on more of an a la carte system, even though they're laid out in packages. So people can customize by taking it out if they want. So that's an option, but
they don't do that very often.
Yeah, they don't do it very often because I'm putting it in there to begin with, you know, and they realize, oh, this is the thing that I'm going to want, you know, first and foremost.
Well, and you have a page on your website that talks about like how important an album and
that would be like the second thing that I would recommend as far as like how to communicate your passion about albums is actually dedicate a page on your website to talking about them and showcasing them. You know, you can do that through blog posts, but I actually have a page on my website, I think we've got it up here on the screen, that talks about your first family heirloom, you know, and this is the number one thing I want you to walk away with. And I show photos of the albums and I talk about some of the features, and this is a great way to kind of introduce clients to what they can expect before they even meet with you. And then that initial client meeting is the other way that you can really share your passion. You know, have sample albums out, you know, as they're going through them, touching and feeling them, talk about your passion for them and why it's so important to you that your clients walk away with an album, you know. And it doesn't take too much on your part to just communicate that passion before that's what your clients want as well. You know what I mean? Like, you're the expert and you're the one who is sharing and leading them through the first time they're getting married, you know, and the choices that they're making. So you can really influence that. And you do that by sharing your passion and showing, you know, beautiful samples that they realize they can't live without, you know. So
we had a really good question, which brings me to a good reminder. Once again, we're doing a sweet giveaway.
We are.
And to enter, just ask a question here during the show, and we'll get to it as best we can. And so that's how you enter to win the giveaway. And Nicole Salter had a good one. What kind of deal, or do you recommend a deal? Do you recommend to convenience clients? Convenience.
We need to get Field's glasses.
So many glasses problems. To convince clients to get an album if they're under that $3,000 price mark. And I mean, markets vary. Obviously, that number could mean, you know, $6,000 somewhere else or $2,000 somewhere else. But for the ones that are just under that, what I'd consider like prime album or whatever mark.
That's a great question. I would say if you're trying to get clients at that level to purchase an album, just be really aware of what you present to them. Find a really a really nice looking option, but that's not that expensive for you.
Right.
And then mark it up by 3. You know, there's a lot of albums that you can get in the $200 to $300 range. You know, you can mark that up and just start with a lower end, you know, but yet still, you know, custom type album that you can give them. And you know, I'm not somebody who likes to negotiate and do discounts, but there are some things like I've heard other photographers do that have worked well. Mary Morantz shared with me once that she does like if you include an album in your package up front, we'll throw in an extra hour of coverage, you know? So it's adding value, but not necessarily discounting. So that's just an idea of something you could do to kind of incentivize your clients to include that up front.
Yeah, I love that idea. For a while, I offered a book and an album. And so the book was more like a canvas covered book. And it cost me a lot less. The time was the same. It still cost me the same amount of time. And so I had to figure that in. But if they just couldn't make the leap to that, you know, they had another choice. Now, for photographers, especially those that are just starting out, do you have any recommendations on what kind of an album they should be presenting to their clients? A full wedding of a wedding they've shot, or something that's a little more of a montage, I guess, of different things, because we see that question come up a lot in the group. I've only second shot weddings. I can't really produce an album of a full wedding yet. Is it okay to show multiple different things or to show styled shoots? Do you have thoughts or opinions?
Sure. I mean, if you need to do that to begin with, I think that's perfectly fine. I think the important thing is to have a beautiful sample to show. I think the ideal is to have your favorite wedding in the album, so it actually looks like a real client's album.
As wedding photographers, we don't have favorites.
It tells the story of the day.
It's so like many kids. Favorites. It's like kids. You don't have a favorite kid.
So yeah, I think like ideally, once you get a wedding that you like enough to do a sample, that's when you want to do it. But if you need to, you know, do something else, like put together your favorites up until you get to that point, then that's okay. But that would be ideal.
That's awesome.
Very cool. So getting back to the original question, I just gave a really long answer, but you had asked like, what was the biggest, you know, question or struggle with designing albums? And the number one thing that I get from people with that is the revision process. You know, we work so hard to just lay out a beautiful design, and then the clients inevitably come back to us, you know, right when we're in the middle of busy season, or we're out of state shooting a wedding, or you know, it's always inevitable that it's always when you're way too busy.
You're not
to get to the revision
and can do it.
Right. And then they totally end up like changing the whole design and ruining it, you know, which is heartbreaking for us as artists. We're like, no, it was perfect to start with. So those are some frustrations. And, you know, in this day and age, with all the do-it-yourself software out there, it really isn't that hard to throw together an initial album design. But I think that what photographers don't realize when they go that route is the struggles they're going to have completing it for their client. And Caitlin James told me this great story once about her decision to start outsourcing, because she really loves designing. You know, she loves the process of designing her own albums. So she did that for a long time. But she said she had one of her clients, a really sweet girl, on Skype with her, just crying one day because she was so frustrated with the process of finalizing the album design. And Caitlin just had an aha moment at that point. She was like, wow, you know, I'm not serving my clients well by, you know, trying to keep this in-house, because even though I can get an initial design to them, like the rest of the process is so painful. And, you know, that's exactly when you don't want to be having, you know, issues with your customer service, because the client loves you after the wedding, they're thrilled with the photos, and then this is their very last experience with you. And that's what they're walking away with. I mean, you can finish off their client experience with a home run and end up getting a ton of referrals, glowing, or you can kind of make it more painful and more of a struggle. So I think that's where outsourcing really wins the day with, you know, whether you do it yourself or outsource, is the initial design can be quick and easy, but the revision process is the real bear.
Yeah.
And, with Align, my album design company, we do the revisions in 2 business days or less. And you just have to email the link back on to your client. So that way, if you're out, shooting on location, something like that, your client isn't waiting.
You don't have to have access to all the photos. You just, somebody else takes care of it.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So on to a couple more questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marvin Blue actually had a really good one. He said, what's a good album company to start with if you're in the beginning stages of selling albums?
That's a great question. There's hundreds and hundreds of them out there, and that's the hard thing, is it's really overwhelming to pick one. I have a couple pieces of advice for you. If you can make it to something like WPPI, where there's a trade show with many different album companies there, that's a really good thing to do so that you can touch and feel the different albums and see the quality. The other thing is Align actually gives away a resource guide for our top 10 most popular album companies that our clients use. And so if you go on alignalbumdesign.com, you can just set up a free account with us, and that'll be emailed straight to you. And it's a really great guide. It's got price ranges for every one of them for kind of a standard 10 by 10 album. So just because sometimes it's hard to compare apples to apples and get all of the pricing guides and everything.
So different.
So that way you can kind of see what the prices are, and you can look at some of them that are a little bit more cost effective to start with. And then there's testimonials from some of our clients that use those and why they like those album companies. So, I mean, getting recommendations from other photographers is a huge time saver,
Yeah, and a huge shout out to some of our favorite people actually own Kiss Books. Sean Austin, as he's known on the internet, is an amazing guy. Kiss Books would be a great place to start. Just because I love them.
Yeah,
and we love Regis.
Yeah.
Who is part of Kiss.
Kiss, I think, is on that list of the top 10.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. Well, and when you're thinking about albums, you might also want to consider your brand of your company, because there are so many different kinds of albums, and you really don't want, trust me, you do not want to be offering 10 different albums. It is much better to have 2 options, because you get into this sort of analysis paralysis for your clients where they just can't choose. It's better if you can narrow it down for them and be the expert. There's lots of different choices. Do I do square? Do I do portrait?
Yeah, I learned that lesson from being on the customer side of things when I was remodeling my house. I moved into my current house 5 years ago, and I wanted to get brick for my fireplace. It was an ugly white tile, and I just wanted to get a brick hearth for my fireplace. So I went to this little brick shop, and I walked in there thinking, okay, I'm just going to get this done. I'm just going to pick something done in 20 minutes, something else checked off the list. Well, I went in there, and there was this one manager there, and he was just geeked out on brick. I mean, this guy loved brick.
He was working in the right spot.
I mean, it was his passion. And his home. I was kind of sharing with him what I was looking for, trying to help him help me, And instead, he just kind of kept heaping on the options. And I left so overwhelmed and confused, not giving them any money when I fully intended to go in there that day and spend money. Yeah. And that was just an aha moment for me. Okay, I need to make sure I don't do this to my clients. Just because my album company gives me 10 different paper options and 50 different cover options, I don't need to get them to pick all of those things. Right. I can show them one thing that I love, a sample album with my favorite paper, my favorite cover, everything I love, the size that I think is best, and then show them one of those and one of a totally different one, and they can just point, Yeah. And if for some reason they're like, oh, do you have this in leather or something, then you can go, into more options. But most of our clients just want to be able to look at something, point at it, and say,
that's it.
Sometimes 31 flavors is 29 too many flavors.
Yeah. Absolutely. Katie Nesbitt has a great question for us. Hey, Katie. She wants to know, what size and how many pages do you include in sort of a standard album, and maybe can people add things? I added that for you, Katie.
Yeah. No, great question. So my standard album is a Graphy Studio album. It's 9.5 by 13. It's a vertical version. I just like that personally. A lot of people do the square. Most people through Align do square. And so like for most people, like a 10 by 10 square is a very standard size. And for a line, 18 spreads or 36 pages. So a spread is when it's open in front of you, 2 pages. So 18 of those or 36 pages is kind of an average album design size. I include 17, which I know is really kind of a random number, in my standard $2,000 album credit with Graphy. So I include a $2,000 credit in all of my album, in all of my packages towards an album. And I word it that way because I want people to know that they can upgrade afterwards, but they can get this exact album that you're seeing with 17 spreads, which is approximately 75 images. I always attach an approximate image number because that's what clients kind of think in terms of, but we're not paying for the number of images. So I say that, and then I let them know we're actually going to design it a little bit larger than what you ordered, just to show you what you could ideally have. We don't have a number of pages in mind. We just want to lay it out really beautifully to tell the story of your day, present that to you after the wedding, and then you can choose at that point whether you want to narrow it down to just what you ordered or upgrade. So it's not like you have to pay more money afterwards, but you can, and a lot of people do.
That's great. I love that idea. I started with just offering 10 spreads and found that it was never enough for me to get it.
It's so hard to design a 10 spread album.
I pushed it to 15, and then I always sort of in my back pocket, I had priced out my album so that I could include an additional 5 spreads. And so at the end of the experience, I would say, and I'd love to gift you 5 spreads. But it was in my back pocket that it was in my back pocket that if there was a problem, I could give them those 5 spreads. And so I recently sent out an album to be edited. It came back like 5 days late. And so I was able to tell the client before, when I knew it was going to come back late, say, you know what, as a thank you for being so patient, I'd love to give you 5 more spreads. I was going to gift it to them anyway. But I kind of had it in my back.
They're not watching.
My back pocket. If they are, that's okay. We love each other. But that's the great thing about albums is that you have a little wiggle room there. You can add an additional 5 spreads to an album if you want to. There are no hard, I mean, I think there's a limit for most companies to the number of pages.
But it's pretty high.
It's like 40 where you can have like the Harry Potter book.
The limit's more on cost on my end.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I think we had another question. Let's see if I can read this. I need my glasses too. Bessie Black, do you have the client? Oh gosh, I love this question. And you answered this one for me a while ago. Do you have the client choose the images, or do you as the photographer choose the images to get started?
I was hoping we could talk about this because that is like after, the revision process, that's like the second biggest question and pain point that photographers have is, it just takes so long for my clients to pick the images. And the reason for this, you guys, is because you're asking them to do something that's too difficult. I mean, honestly, I'm just going to tell you, like, that is too much of a burden to put on your clients. And you think you're doing them a favor by letting them pick their favorites, but they're overwhelmed. I mean, they love all of their photos. They want to stuff them all in there. And, it's just too hard for them to sit down and part with some of them, And so what I really recommend that photographers do is pre-design their albums. So you pick the images for your clients, and, you pick what you think is best as you're designing. And actually with Align, we recommend that photographers send us like a favorites folder with their very, very favorites, like that they blog.
They've got to get it.
Yeah. And then they can send us like an additional photos, folder that just has like some extra family portraits and reception dancing shots and just, some of those extra things to maybe fill out the story that aren't like super artistic, but what our designers do then is they take that favorites folder and they make those the focal points of the pages, and they make sure to include as many of those as possible. And then they fill in with the others, and giving your designer, or if you're doing it yourself, having that flexibility to kind of pick the images as you go to a certain extent is helpful, because then you put together the most cohesive design that tells the best story of the day. And so that's another benefit of pre-designing is if you're choosing the images yourself, the actual initial design is going to be much more beautiful and cohesive than if you're kind of having to fit images together like a puzzle that just don't go together. And so what I do is, get that pre-designed right after the wedding. The week of the wedding, I have an album design, ready for my clients to view. And I send that to them and I let them know ahead of time, this is how we're going to do it. And you're going to get the chance to swap out photos and make it perfect for you.
With what?
But that's the great thing is that's a much easier ask and thing to, require of your clients is, looking at an initial design and saying, I like this, but I prefer this image over this image.
Now they're changing 75 images and not choosing.
It's much easier for them to make revisions than it is to pick those initial images. So do yourself a favor, stop asking your clients to pick the images and just go ahead and pre-design. You'll be happy, your clients will be happy, everything will go more smoothly. It takes one of those speed bumps out of the process.
Well, and it's hard because as photographers, we spend a lot of time like cultivating galleries and images and putting all of that together. It's hard to remember. Not everybody does that. Right? Yeah. And so when they're asked to pick their favorites, and we're able to go this one, tiny little thumbnails, and we're able to say all of these for these 14 reasons. Apparently, that's not normal. So
that's not what most people do in their evening.
Do your clients a solid, and you design it first.
Well, and you can integrate this into your workflow, correct? Because like in Photo Mechanic, I would choose which ones are going in a blog post. Right then and there, you can be like, I like that for an album. I like that for an album. And so you've also helped yourself in the process.
It saves you time.
Design, you already have your favorite.
Yeah, I always recommend only culling once, So as you're culling your wedding to begin with, use a rating system. I do 3 stars. I do 3 stars for my favorite images, about 80 to 100. I do another 2 stars for the additional images that I want to include in the album, just to send to my designer. Maybe another 100, 150 of those. And then, another 300 to 500 maybe of the 1 stars, which are just the ones that we're giving the client in the gallery.
Sure. Right.
And that gives you 2 folders you can send to your designer to create a beautiful design from. Another way that I've heard this done, one of our aligned clients, Abby Grace, does an amazing job. She just culls once for her favorites and the additional images. So just 2 different star ratings, just favorites and additional images. She sends the favorites onto a line, and then she tells her designer to leave 2 extra spreads in the design that are blank that say family photos and reception dancing photos, or however many number of spreads. But that way she asks her clients to pick their 5 to 8 photos for this spread and, X number. So it's a lot more definable question, for your clients in that way.
Much smaller ask.
Yeah. I mean, so that's another way to do it that I've heard that is kind of cool.
Awesome. I like that. Yeah. That's very fun. Lots of choices with albums, right?
Yeah.
Can you read another one?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So Jody Frost actually asked a really good one. Do the album companies offer a discount in getting started with albums to show clients?
Most album companies do offer like a sample discount. So when you're purchasing a studio sample for your initial client meetings to show them the beautiful thing they could have, they usually give like somewhere between 30 to 50% off. Most album companies do. So you'll just have to check with your album company on that.
And that's one of the good things about coming to WPPI is that then you're not ordering a sample that maybe ends up not being what you actually want to sell, because you need to show exactly what it is that you want to sell, like down to the font and debossing and whatnot. You want to be really specific. So.
Right. Yeah, that leprechaun print may look cool on a small swatch, but if it's on a full album, it may not.
It's really different.
Everybody loves the leprechaun print on the wedding album. Everybody.
I have no idea what that is.
Top seller.
Another question from Bridget Marie Baums. Hi, Bridget. Do you offer them to pay it off, or do you require that they pay for their album up front? I mean, I know it's included for you.
So it's included in the package. So I just divide it up like I would my whole package. So they pay for 1/3 of the cost of the package up front, and then the remainder's due a month before the wedding. But I would definitely if you want to offer your clients a payment plan, I think that you can, but you can't actually order the physical album until it's paid in full. Does that make sense? So if it helps them to divide it up, that's fine. But just so they know you're not actually placing the order until it's paid in full.
Yeah. And I've heard of some people, speaking of the finances of albums, of actually having a separate account or a savings account for albums. And so when they get paid by their client, the amount that will cover the cost of that album goes into that account so that they're never putting them on credit cards and they can pay cash for that album. Because one of Katie's second question was the timeline on getting clients to do their revisions. You may have 3 or 4 clients want their album 9 months from now. You want to make sure you've got that cash right there ready to pay
I do
for
that in
album.
QuickBooks. I just have like a little sub account. It's all in the same checking account, so I'm not doing transfers, but I just have a sub account that's allocated for product costs.
You're keeping an eye
and so
on
when
that.
I'm paid before the wedding even happens, I separate that out.
Yeah.
But another thing on that topic is if you are waiting consistently for clients to approve their album design and finalize it, you need to include some incentives and deadlines.
Oh, deadlines for sure.
Yeah, clients need
they
need deadlines, they need incentives to get things done. I actually put a clause in my contract that says, you know, the client agrees to finalize the album within 6 months after the wedding. If they do not do so, the price of the album goes up $500.
Okay.
And I don't do that because I want more money. I do that because I want to be able to email them at the 5-month mark with a template email that I've already got done that says, this is what, you know, the situation is. Yeah. You've got 1 month to finish this up. Right. I'm so excited to get your album to you. And that's
you want to end it and be able to wrap that up. And
that's really all that it takes. I mean, that one email typically gets people moving. And I've never actually had to charge someone that additional fee. Right. But what it does is it makes it so that if you do for some reason have a client that's waiting to order their album for a year or two and your album company raises their prices on you, you're covering your costs, you know, because it is such a long-term thing. You don't want your price to go up, you know, as a result of your client taking a long time.
For sure. And so how do you get, Katie actually asked this question as well. How do you get the clients to make their revisions in a timely manner? And I know that's a big part of a line. So how do you make that happen?
Well, definitely that clause in the contract is one thing, but when I'm doing upselling, I really do what I was talking about before with like designing additional spreads beyond what they order. I actually, when I send them their initial album design, I explain to them, you know, this is what's included in your package, but I design more because there's so many good photos from your wedding. You have these options, you can narrow it down or you can upgrade. And I let them know, like, if you choose to upgrade and you get the full design with all these additional spreads and you finalize your album within a month, I'll give you 20% off the cost of the upgrade. Okay. And so that's incentivizing them to make that choice to upgrade and also to get their revisions done quickly. Okay. So, I mean, there's not too much else that you can do other than maybe throwing in an extra spread for free as an incentive if they've already paid for the whole thing ahead of time, you know? Right. So,
if you get this done within the next 3 minutes.
Yeah, any way that you can, any way you can, you know, incentivize them and give them deadlines, you're going to see a lot quicker. You know,
well, and then they get their album quicker. Yeah, there is going to be a production time that it's going to take 3 to 6 weeks, depending upon the album company, for them to actually get that album in hand. And so I don't think they think about that either. They're like, oh, if I just give these to you now, I'll have my album next week. And other than a couple of album options that I know of, you really do not have your album next week. Right. And so
that's one thing to think about too with like when you're coming up to the holidays is maybe send out like a mass email to all your clients that haven't finished up their albums and do it maybe, you know, at the beginning of October or something.
Don't you do that around Halloween?
Yeah,
let them know.
To give them that deadline of like, if you want your wedding album before Christmas so you can show it to everyone, this is what we need to do.
Thanksgiving dinner.
Bill Parsons asked a good question. I'm going to rephrase it a little bit because you shot digital for so many years and you did so many albums digitally. Has that changed at all with now that you shoot film as far as like the way that you design albums?
It hasn't too much. I mean, I think just my own taste over time, I like a little bit more minimalism and simplicity in my layouts. So maybe fewer images per spread, but I don't think there's really any really definable difference between an album with film or digital. It's more about
one just looks better.
One has better skin tones.
Right. One just rocks.
So
digital is awesome for those of you that are shooting digital.
Digital's fantastic.
It is.
It really is. It's wonderful.
That's awesome. So it doesn't change the process or the time, right? Because you get digital scans back.
I get high-res JPEGs from my film images, and so everything beyond that is the same.
Yeah.
So Scott Williams, who is our featured show chief,
hey Scott,
he and his lovely wife Mystery, he asked, does it ever make sense to give him album credit as part of the package? Yeah, we kind of talked about that. As far each one of your packages, although they can change the packages like a la carte, it comes initially with a $2,000 album credit.
Yeah, I think it's good to word it as a credit, so you're letting them know just in the verbiage of your package that they can. This is going to cover something, but they're probably going to want to spend more. But also attaching that number, mine is a $2,000 credit, to an actual physical album. So you're actually saying this $2,000 credit, it will cover this sample album in front of you. So you know you're going to get a good size album for that, but you'll probably want to upgrade the number of images that are included.
Okay. And I think it's great that you're giving them like that 75, that number, 75 images to kind of just give them some forethought as to what's going to be in the album.
I let my clients know when in the initial client meeting, when we're talking and they're looking through this, I talk through my process of upselling. So it's not something they're surprised by. And I let them know, it's hard to know right now how many images you're going to want in your album.
I mean, you want a lot of full.
You're not seeing your wedding images. You don't know how much you're going to love them. And I just know from past experience, most of my clients love them so much that they want to include more.
Whereas I may have ordered less. You never know.
So I let them know, this is just a service we do, so you could see what you could ideally have, but you're definitely not compelled to have to purchase more at that time.
Well, and we've talked a lot about albums today, all about wedding albums, but this is not just for wedding photographers. Portrait photographers do albums. My friend Courtney Talbot is an amazing newborn photographer, and she sells albums. And as a mom, man, I wish I had an album of Lily's newborn images. So there's all sorts of, whatever kind of a photographer you are, albums can really be a huge part of your business and really a great service to your clients, because a lot of people will say, oh, I just want the digitals, I'll do it myself. And they're just going to end up in that
they never do.
I haven't printed some of my own albums.
Yeah.
Family photos and anniversary pictures with Justin and Mary, on my to-do list.
I mean, Align's general manager, she designs albums for other people. Yeah. She's an album designer. Her name's Denise. She has her wedding photos and hasn't done anything with them. So it's like, you have the best of intentions. Your clients have the best of intentions, but you never get around to it. And the reality is it's really hard for you to design your own album because you're so emotionally attached to those images too. It's so much easier to send that off to a designer, somebody who's a little bit more objective, who can do that for you. And you end up with a much better product and with a product period, because it's actually done.
I need to get our anniversary photos designed, and I wish that I could win the $150 credit today, but I'm not eligible. So we're in just a few minutes, we will pick the winner of that. So if you have any other questions, make sure that you throw them up in the chat right now before you miss that.
And there was one other thing that you wanted to talk about today that we've kind of touched on throughout, but the different kind of sales models that you can offer with albums. Do you want to go over those? Because you said, like, here's my favorite album, here's an album that may work for you.
So as far as kind of how you lay out your pricing with albums, I think the package model is the best way to go. I think including an album in every one of your packages is the best way to communicate your passion for albums and the fact that you think every client should walk away from their experience with one. And so that's what I do. I include one in every package. But like I said, it's a little bit based on an a la carte system where they can take that out. Now, if you just have a purely a la carte based system where you're like, pick from all this list of things, you're kind of communicating that an album is optional. It's not that important, and you're not going to sell as many. So the package model is by far superior. There are some things you can do if clients, if some of your clients haven't included an album in their package and you want them to do that at some point, you can, this is another thing I heard from Mary Morantz that she does, they do every year. the day after Halloween, she sends out an email to everybody who hasn't included an album and does, you know, an incentive, a discount of some kind if you include one within this time period, you know? And so just following up with your clients, giving them another opportunity to add it on is another way that you could, you know, potentially sell more albums.
Awesome.
I think that's great.
Yep.
I love that. Now I want to go sell more albums.
Do it. Go complete the ones.
Do it.
I need to go and complete the ones. I have one in a revision stage, and I have two that are really at the very beginning. And one was a client who wanted to choose her own, and I said, you're absolutely welcome to do that. But then I actually got an email from her yesterday that said, I realized I can't look through 750 images and choose. If you could just give me a draft to start with, that would be better. And that was a suggestion you gave me maybe 3 years ago, and I went to that model, and it has been so much better. And she was the first bride who had wanted to do her own, and we're right back where I thought that we probably would be. It just is too much. That's not what they do. And even for me, it's too much because it's not what I do over and over again. And so that's where that outsourcing of, I've got my favorite images for her. I've got my secondary images. I just need to personally outsource them and send them along your way to your team.
Another good question came up, and I like this one because it comes up a lot in our business. So Laura Beth Robinson asks, if you don't do any in-person sales, but provide both collections and a la carte pricing, do you have advice for upselling spread album covers? For us, so many of our clients are actually from out of state, and Arizona is their destination. You know, a lot of times we don't get to do those in-person sales where we can show them an album and we can do all this recommendation.
Well, I'm a fan of a Skype meeting. So I think, you know, if at all possible, having your clients on Skype, you can actually hold it up and show it to them. But I
trust me, it feels good, right?
Yeah. With my upselling model, I really feel like it's important to let clients know the process up front so that it's not something they're surprised by. You know, otherwise they feel yucky about it. And so it's really important for me to do that. And regardless of the way that you do that, whether through Skype, which I think is great, I think, you know, even if you do that in person or via Skype verbally, you also need to have it written somewhere. So including a clause in your contract saying the client understands that the photographer will be designing the album larger than what they ordered, but they're under no obligation to purchase, you know, just so that you've got that in writing and can point back to that in case, you know, it's been so long since they met with you, they don't remember, you know, you can remind them. And then I also put it in my email templates. So at different points in the workflow, I'll communicate something with my clients, and I've got that all in templates. That way they know, they're reminded again, this is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to work. You really have to manage their expectations. And whether that's over Skype with PDFs, maybe you record a video that you send to all of your clients who are booking you from out of state, you need to make sure that you're doing that really clearly.
Well, and reminding them that they can upgrade sort of gets them in that mindset too, that maybe at Christmas when mom is like, hey, what do you guys want for Christmas? You know what? We really love an extra, I don't know, 3 or 4 spreads in our album. This is what that would cost. I mean, it preps them too that they can be ready to buy, not just be offended that there's more spreads that they can have or that they have to say goodbye to.
Absolutely.
I love that. That's great. Are we ready to pick a winner? We'll let JT help us a little bit, who produces our show offline for us. Help to choose a random winner for $150 from Align Album Design. And if you don't need it, call me. I'll take it off your hands. It's very exciting. I have used Align it before, and they are fantastic. The turnaround time is really great, and the peace of mind of just knowing like this is taken care of, and the revisions can be taken care of easily it's really great. It's good for you, and it's good for your clients.
It's in the hands of a professional.
I love Katie Nesbitt is on today, and she's on a Facebook group that photographers passionate about albums. We have a Facebook group and we talk about album stuff, and she got on there one day and she's like, I'm so excited because my clients just sent me like a gazillion revisions and I don't have to worry about it at all because Align's doing it. So it's a great feeling when that happens, that you know you don't actually have to deal with it.
Right. No, it's just done and taken care of.
And a really good question that JT brought up was for people who are starting off, with Align if they've never used Align Design before. Is there any like incentive, like first time I'm using it, anything like that you guys have going on?
Yeah, I would love to give you guys, everybody who's on here, if you haven't used Align yet, I would love to give you half off your first album design. I know, and all you have to do is use the promo code first order. So 1ST first order.
Awesome.
All caps. Promo code on your order form when you go to place an order, and you get half off. And that way you can kind of give it a test drive and kind of decide, you know, there's always a little bit of a learning curve when you're trying a new service. So that way it makes it a little easier to get in there and give it a try.
You guys are going to love it.
That's awesome.
It's going to make life so much better. And congratulations to Michelle Staley. We would love to give you 150. Well, not us, Melissa. Melissa is going to give you 150. A straight deal. No, Melissa's going to give you $150 to Align Album Design to try them out, and that's huge.
Yeah. So definitely make sure, Michelle, that you give us your email address so that we can send you the details about how to redeem that.
Yeah.
Post that up in the chat.
Or I'm sure we can find you on the Facebook.
We will track you down on social media, Michelle, to give you your $150 credit. There was another question that came up from Michael Prime Jr., and I think this is a great question. Do you sell or push parent albums at all, or are you just really focused on the couple getting an album?
Absolutely. I think parent albums are an easy upsell. I mean, for some clients, some people are like, oh, I don't need that. But that's something that a lot of times, you know, parents will come in and purchase, or, you know, the couple is having like the parent pay for the full cost of the package, but they just want to do like a little gift for them. So parent albums are really cost effective for us as photographers for the most part, because our album companies give us discounts off of them.
And the design is finished.
Yeah, the design is done. It's the same exact design as your primary album. So I include a couple parent albums in my second package. So I've got 3 packages. All of them include the primary album, and then the middle package includes, in addition to what's in the bottom, it includes the high-res digital images. So that's an addition.
Awesome.
And then it includes 2 parent albums. So that way, you know, they can have something for their parents. I think it's a great thing to do. Easy.
And I love that, the idea of the bride and groom gifting it to the parents. That's pretty neat. As a nice little thank you.
Good
Parents
point
love
for brides
them.
and grooms.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brag books back in the day.
Yep.
Those are now on iPhones, apparently. But, well, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. It was so fun.
This is really fun. A lot of really good information. So if you happen to join us halfway through, you can go back and watch the full episode. All of our episodes are here on showithere.com/live. And next week, we've got a very special episode. It's on Thursday. So move Show It Live in your calendar from Tuesday to Thursday. Yeah. It is the only other day of the week that starts with T, huh?
Dropping random knowledge on you.
Random knowledge. At 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, our guest is going to be photographer Sarah Zimmer, who shot the first wedding of 2016 in Times Square, which is very...
Ryan Seacrest all over the place.
Ryan Seacrest. I'm not sure that he was involved in this.
He was everywhere.
According to Field, he was everywhere. So I hope you'll join us for that.
It's on the internet. It's true.
We'll be talking about Show It 5 details. And I will tell you that the gentleman sitting to my right is a chronic oversharer. And so you might get to learn some really fun things about Show It 5 that we haven't. You never know. We may have to duct tape his mouth shut so that we don't share too much. But make sure that you come back. And if you'd like to be a guest on our show, we are always looking for amazing guests to be part of Show It Live. If you are a creative or a photographer, anything having to do with creativity, we would love to know more from you. And you can apply right here at showithere.com up under contributors. It'll say up somewhere up there on the internet, and you click on that button, and you can apply to be part of our show, and we would love to have you.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week on Thursday. Thanks again for joining us.
Melissa, and happy 2016.
Happy 2016. Have a great week, guys.
Bye.